Peace, everyone. Larry here with my brother Safo, and we're waiting for a couple more people to come in as we begin to have a conversation around the myth and propaganda of the Black buying power. Quasi, my brother just came in. What's up, Quasi? And so we're gonna go through some questions and dialogue about it. For the people that's watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching, you can join in the discussion at any time and comment. If you have so much to say and you need to actually speak with your video, you can also join in and I'll tell me and I'll send you a link and then you can join in that way as well. But before that, we'll just get started with the questions that I have. Our first question for the brothers, Quasi and Asafo. What do you think is some of our people's misunderstanding about propaganda? When you think about propaganda, I don't know if you guys will define it the same. I assume you will, but what do you think Black people's like misunderstanding or misunderstandings about propaganda?
So Quasi, you want to take that one first, or you want me to go? Okay. So I guess that means I go first then. So I can hear you. Yes, we can hear you now. Okay.
All right. You might be the elder, so I'm gonna have you go ahead first.
Okay, that's fine. At 37, I'm the elder of the group. But
Actually, I'm 41. Well, I'm
okay.
talking about the elder as far as your wisdom goes.
Oh wow, that I appreciate that, brother. But so it's often said that propaganda is to a democracy what violence is to a totalitarian government. You know, for this to be called a democracy, for us to do what we do, and I'm speaking beyond race, I'm talking about just Americans in general. For us to do what we do and have the type of stark inequality and injustice that we experience on a day-to-day basis, especially Black people, but not exclusively Black people. We have to be born into an environment where propaganda is as pervasive as water is to a fish. It's all around us. We're born, as soon as we're born, when they put that little Mickey Mouse hat on our heads, as soon as we come out the womb, that's propaganda. You know, so we're hit with it from the day of our birth to the day we leave this planet. And like I said, it's pervasive and it's all towards pushing people to work and act and think in ways where we're assuming, we have the assumption that we're working and acting and believing things and thinking in a way that is based on our own agency or on our own accord, but in acting them out, they end up benefiting the people who are the propagators, the people who are responsible for the propaganda that we see on a daily basis. Now, that's not to say that propaganda is necessarily a bad thing. Propaganda is relative based on who it helps and who it hurts. So again, and you're right, we don't really have an understanding of propaganda. The Jared Ball in the book speaks about how the us believing in the 1.1 trillion and the Black buying power and the financial literacy and these other things can only come after our brains have been, not his words but mine, thoroughly tenderized through propaganda, anti-Black propaganda, and then with the introduction of the 1.1 trillion buying power and other things, we're more susceptible to accepting it and believing it without any critical thinking at all.
All right. What about you, Quasi? What you think about Crazy? What you think about the propaganda, our understanding of it? What do you think we mess up or misunderstand about it?
Well, first, I think it's important to um, maybe contextualize um, who we're talking to, who we're talking about in regards to propaganda or any other phenomena because um, depending on your education and depending on your level of social consciousness, you might perceive something like propaganda, based on your interaction with um, propaganda, as Brother Asafo was saying. We exposed to it from birth. We might not recognize it as being propaganda or something being propagated, but if we really understand the origin of things, then we can understand our interaction with them better. And I think that requires a certain level of or deviation from mainstream education. My first, for me, I'll speak for myself. Um, my first, I guess I say my first education on what propaganda is came to me when I was incarcerated and began to study the Black Power movement, Black Panther Party, and how propaganda was used on both sides, on the left and the right. And I came to understand the importance of using these as tools, not just toward our education, but also toward our liberation, but also understanding the other side, how most of what we believe in is because of this subtle indoctrination. And then looking at, you might see me all the time always talking about Nazi Germany. I think that's one of the greatest points in history. We need to really study that. Hitler used propaganda. Actually, there being a ministry of propaganda of some sort. They had an entire section of government just on propaganda itself, using it to openly build a consensus amongst the people. Here in the US, we have the same thing happening with the media. It's subtle, right? It's subtle. They're not calling it the propaganda machine, but look at what it is concretely, right? Idealistically, it's just, media, it's marketing, it's selling, it's information. That's idealistically, but on a material level, look at what it is concretely. It's a propaganda machine, and it reverberates throughout every aspect of society, from um, what we think we want, to the education that we get, to the products that we buy, to who we choose in a relationship. It's all prefabricated through propaganda. So I think it's such a broad topic that we need to discuss it um, more in depth, isolate it, and really look at it concretely, what it is, and educate ourselves and each other on how these things are used. I even say in Kemet, they wrote on everything, everywhere. That was a form of propaganda. A king paints this picture as him being the closest thing to God and infallible and immaculate, perfected person. That's all propaganda.
Right,
And what was the purpose of it? Right?
right,
What was the
right,
purpose behind it? We have to look at these things for what they are, I think.
right. One of the things that I hear a lot about propaganda, or how in the tone that I hear it, it's mostly used when people are trying to discredit information that they say is false or is not convenient for them, and not knowing the neutralized ideology or the marketing or whatever the messaging of propaganda. Um, Miss Wysett said, "What makes us feed into it?" And I mean, after we feel and know it's wrong. I think, and before we get to that, I think we're going to get into some of that today. So we talk about the myth and the propaganda of Black buying power. And we're, I think, 5 chapters in. And I'm pretty much, what I'm doing with these questions is I'm going into like thoughts about us, and how we kind of as a collective move based off of the experience, the propaganda, all these things that we get, and then we're going to get into some details about that chapter. And so my next question is, both of you can answer this or one. You speak a little bit about a need for us as Black people, as African people, when we get information, how to fact find or our need to participate in research, or at least actually read the research that's available to us, as opposed to, saying something. Like, I remember I'm having this conversation in the barbershop the other day, and we're arguing for hours, maybe two. And then at the tail end of the argument, a young brother, right, comes in and get his hair cut. And while we talking still about this, he's like, no, that ain't right, because the Jewish dollar circulate in the community, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, wait. I said, where do you get that information from? Like, how do you know that's true? He's like, I don't know. It's like, oh, so how important is it for us to participate in research, or at least read the damn research that's out there?
That's extremely important, and you raise a very critical point. We would, just the idea of even saying, okay, well, before I repeat what I'm about to, before I articulate what I'm about to say, as far as the Jewish dollar circulating, maybe I'm going to be asked where this came from, and I'm going to have to say I don't know, because I don't know. So maybe I want to actually find out and fact check this stuff before I actually start repeating it or telling people this. So, it takes a certain amount of critical thought to be able to do that. I was speaking with a lady who's running for the 7th district in South Carolina, here in South Carolina. Her name is Melissa Watson. And, she's running as a, kind of milquetoast, mediocre Democrat who, she's a Black woman. So everyone's making over that, that this is, such a wonderful thing. But we actually confronted her and asked her what her thoughts about reparations were. And she said that, it seemed like she didn't even know what the word reparations meant, much less have an opinion on it. But talking with her and everything, and she finally said, I would be in support of it, but we would have to teach Black people financial literacy before they even get the reparations. And
don't even bring up financial literacy. Let's keep that in the trash can.
Right. So I'm coming to my point. So when she said that, I asked her, well, what makes you think that Black people need, a financial literacy training in order to receive reparations? Where are you getting that from? And she said, well, her what she was relying on was data from, she said that the old tired trope, I'm trying to remember how she said it, that people who win the lottery are broke 3 to 5 years later after winning the lottery. We asked her where she got that information from. Oh, it's on the internet. You could find it. It's easy to find. So I wish I had known this before talking to her, but after the fact, we actually looked for that report and we found the report. And this is for anyone else who uses that trope, that data set. Number one, that's not what that report says. The report actually says that people who win the lottery are just as likely to go bankrupt 3 to 5 years later as people who don't have the lottery, who don't win the lottery. That's a lot different from people winning the lottery going broke 3 to 5 years later. Okay, so we take misinterpretations of these data sets that happen to hurt and diminish the image of poor people and oppressed people, and we just go along and carry it along and start regurgitating it like it's actual, like it's axiomatic, like it's the truth.
Right.
And we don't even question ourselves about where this stuff comes from.
Or sometimes you can go on their website, right? And if you put the scroll bar over there to the right and you go all the way up and go down, at the bottom, sometimes it says satire.
Mhm.
Like they literally a lot of it, like I've read down, like, yo, do you not like check this part? It literally says satire. So, yeah.
Right. So
I
yeah.
hope,
So go ahead. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to finish up by saying, the big thing about this is that we need to start having this information. Now, I'll know that from now on. So whenever someone brings that up, oh, when people win the lottery, they're broke 3 to 5 years later. I know I have the intellectual weaponry now to counter that and say and let them know that they have no idea what they're talking about, and they need to go do some more reading before regurgitating nonsense.
Absolutely. Quincy, you got something on that in terms of doing the research, reading the research, or something? Just like not just spitting things back out.
I'll read a little bit from the text, actually. Uh, this is page 14, chapter 2, page 14. Um, let me see. This is the second paragraph. It is primarily through the practice of popular journalism and commentary that allows the word power in the phrase buying power to lose all meaning. The term power is redefined to mean shopping, but works to confuse potentially powerful communities and energies into what advertisers want most, which are consumers, whose acts of generating wealth for others is magically redefined into a concept of individual and collective political, economic, or social power. The ability to turn the concept of power into a simple act of consuming what others own and produce is what makes the issue of buying power one more of propaganda than one of economics. That was important to me because it kind of ties in, the perspective of having the research and having the data, who's directing it, why they're directing it, and ultimately to whose benefit. Um, and understanding that this is all a method that is used, the propaganda is just a method that is used to sway your opinion, sway your mind, sway your behavior toward an end result that ultimately benefits someone else. Even if it does seem like it's empowering or to say it is empowering, still ultimately benefits the ruling class. Um, I think it's important in this discussion um, to look at the fundamental structure of the society. I might have said this in one of our last discussions, but understanding the base and superstructure, that materialist conception of society, we have to really put that into the conversation. I know Dr. Ball's work, been following his work for about 10 years now. And I know a lot of, some of his favorite intellectuals and favorite scholars, one being, um, what's the brother's name? Uh, Sandy Darity. And then he's a big fan of the white guy. What's his name? Conspiracy books. Oh my goodness, I lost his name. But anyhow, I know the trajectory that he comes from. I know where he um, pulls a lot of his understanding about history and politics from. Um, and it's great. It's good because it gives us an understanding of what we're dealing with. It opens up room for us to have these discussions like we are right now, right? But does it materially break down society and look at the root cause or the base, the origin of all of this? It doesn't, because a lot of these concepts, not Jordan Maxwell, I'm sorry, but it it takes away from what the problem really is. And at the root, the problem is a uh, white male capitalist, um, Christian, Judeo Christian dominated system, right? So if we can figure out, yeah, there's this huge machine of propaganda swaying us in this direction to spend our money, great. If we don't spend our money the way that we spend our money, if we understand the truth about our financial situation in this country, great. If we save every dollar we have, great. If we're self-employed, if we only buy black, if everybody has a business, it doesn't change the fundamental nature of the society, which is white, male, capitalist dominated, right? But we get all these arguments, we get all of these discussions and topics that we latch on to, should we use our $1 trillion black buying power? No, it's a myth. We don't have it. None of that changes the fundamental nature of the society, which is that every area of infrastructure is controlled and dominated. So it doesn't matter how we spend our money. It doesn't matter what kind of money we have. It doesn't matter if we end poverty. It doesn't matter if we end unemployment. The society is still a white male capitalist dominated society. So that's the root that these conversations detract us from. So how do we take this conversation about propaganda and about the myth and propaganda of black buying power, and how do we use it to liberate ourselves from under the foundational or the base structure of this society, I think is what we need to gear our discussions around.
All right. So I believe that a lot of times when we get into spaces where we've read, we've learned, we've studied, um, majority of us come to back to the community as if like I figured it out and this is what we should be doing, or like this is the main issue or whatever. And sometimes we forget that others are not as well read as we are, right? They don't know they have the experience, they just don't know the information. And even sometimes they're kind of like um, cognitive dissonance kicked in, or they just reject the information because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So I feel like there's multiple ways to kind of get back to the root. If you do look at the discussions, the the book club is one thing, right? But the other discussions is something that are topics that are popular or that are being talked about, and there's always the intention of bringing somebody like yourself, somebody like Asafo, and other people to kind of reel people back into what we should be focusing on, give them resources so that we can actually have a collective consciousness and kind of move towards liberation rather than just like you said, and people will say talking or understanding or whatever. I feel like a massive education has to happen. I don't think any of us came out of the womb just knowing that we need to go ahead and liberate ourselves from European hegemony. I feel like it probably took us some kind of studying, whether we've been in prison, we've been in our bedrooms, or wherever we were. Something caused us to dive into this information, and so I would just always help us keep in mind that majority of our people, as we're kind of talking about, are not in that space where they actually quietly understand something. So kind of like my next question was, when you think about Black consumption, education, behaviors, and all the things that happens, I guess kind of to orient what you just said, how do we put people into the space where they understand that all those things, that consumption, that education, and what actually any behavior that they have energizes an economy, and oftentimes it's actually manipulated. So how do you begin to have that conversation with people, or even teach people how to be cognizant of that and then to redirect the energy to stop it?
Was that question just for me?
Or anybody, either one of y'all, or both.
Unless you want to go first, I was about to go.
Brother.
Okay. Well, I think as far as teaching people, and I think, and this is also in response to what Brother Kwasi said, we one of the main things that we have to do is kind of engage in a process of kind of dismantling the ideas that have been we've come to accept as sacrosanct and axiomatic in our community, and of course, keeping our eye on the broader project of Black liberation. There are sub projects that need to be done in order to get to the big project. And if we're looking, if Fred Hampton used to say all the time, we need to be very, very careful of coming up with conclusions that don't conclude, solutions that don't solve, and answers that don't answer. We're always trying to, implement. And I told Larry this before. If a solution is based on a false premise, the solution is going to fail. Okay, so if we're coming up with the false premise that Black people are where they are because they aren't doing wise consuming, or they're spending all of their money, or wasteful with their money, or any number of things, whatever solution is based on that is going to fail because the premise is false. The premise is wrong. The directional emphasis is wrong. So the solution is going to fail. And even if the solution succeeds, and I put that in air quotes, it's still the oppression, like you pointed out brilliantly, the oppression is still going to be there because the solution was based on something false. You understand? So I think we're talking about solutions. We have to kind of disinvest people psychologically and intellectually from faulty solutions and faulty conclusions in order to get to the broader project of what we need to do for the final confrontation between Black solidarity and white supremacy. There was another aspect to your question, Larry, that I didn't want to miss. What was
Pretty much is I actually you kind of hit it anyway, and it was just pretty much like when people come to terms with that every aspect of their life, all behaviors has economic implications. But when you think about consumption, education, behaviors, um, it's oriented to energize the economy, and if you're not cognizant of that, it'll kind of be spinning our wheels. Like especially like you said, if we're basing our understanding of a problem on a myth or our condition on the myth, and then we creating solutions with that stuff programmed into us. We turn into Black capitalism and some other stuff.
Yeah, appreciate your input, Osafo. Totally agree. The gentleman I was thinking of earlier was Noam Chomsky. I read about 5 of his books. He was real popular, um, amongst the conspiracy theorist Black group.
Yeah, I know his daughter.
Really?
Yeah, Avi
Yeah.
Chomsky. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you got Nicole Klein's another one. Des Griffin. There's a long list of them. These white academians who who academically challenge the system, right? Let me say that. So you have these white academians, right? These so-called liberals or these progressives who, or these leftists who, on the surface, are challenging the system because they're pointing out things and they're saying things that no one else is, or that might be contrary to whoever the leading political figure or ideology is, but they never challenge white domination, right? So that's my thing, Larry. When I say the things that I said, and I appreciate your uh, passion and understanding of layers of education, and I have to always say, I was fortunate and unfortunate at the same time to spend 7 years in prison reading books, right? And studying and watching trends, and then spending the last 20 years really just being groomed by some elders who don't always even agree with each other. But what I found was the importance of having a firm ideology, right? A firm ideology, a firm philosophy toward reality, and staying grounded in it, which carries my thinking in the way that I respond to things, in the way that I um, view different phenomena. And that's
Right.
a very important thing, is that we have to develop, uh, Dr. Bobby Wright, the Honorable Dr. Bobby Wright, called it a black social theory, which is important. We
Mhm.
don't have one. He said that 50 years ago. We still don't have a firm black program, right? A philosophical, um, a ideological framework that carries us in the direction that we want to go. We have, different people who have their, the Nation of Islam has their thing. The Hebrew Israelites have their thing. The African centered community, I don't know what the African centered community has. Everybody all over the place. But until we actually have a firm philosophical approach to reality, a uh, a firm ideological stance, then we can get easily swayed from left to right,
Right.
depending on what kind of information is presented to us at any particular time, right?
Right.
That's the important thing for me, is that while we're educating ourselves, we know why, toward what end, what's the end goal, what's the end game and objective. Um, is it to point out the contradictions in society so that we are better equipped to live in this society? Or is it to educate ourselves so that we are prepared to get out of it and create our own? One or two pathways. There's a line of demarcation. Either we're trying to educate ourselves so that we can be more comfortable here, or we're trying to get away from this system and hope it destroys it, it eats itself alive. I don't want to talk, you know, too abstract because I
Right.
know the government's watching. But
Right. So let's I want y'all to quickly answer these two questions. Like, give it 3 to 5 minutes so I can get to my next question. And I'm not going to read the whole thing by WhatsApp, but do you think that we've gotten? I know we've heard this over time, and for some reason, most of our Americans believe in Whig history as opposed to history, and that things have just gotten better over time, like the Europeans have taught us. But do you think that things got worse over time? I'm not going to give her a personal experience about her grandmother purchasing a house, blah, blah, blah. But real quickly, do y'all believe that things have gotten better or worse over time, or worse over time? Then we'll go to the next question.
Well, I think that things have, like we said in the discussion. I think it was, what was it, yesterday we had the discussion with
Racism.
about racism.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're just in a perennial battle against the forces of white supremacy and any forces that will be anti-African on this planet. Um, whether those forces are actual physical forces or ideological forces, social, economic, political, what have you. Any manifestation of anti-Africanness, we've been in a perennial war with for really thousands of years. And there are ebbs and flows, to be sure, but one thing that we can be sure of is that war, that battle, that confrontation has been consistent. And sometimes it manifests itself in ways that are subtle, and sometimes it manifests itself in ways that are explicit. But the war is always ongoing. It never stops. And so that's my answer to that question. So that's why I'd say, kind of, I don't want to get into is it worse now or is it better now or anything like that. It's been what it has always been.
Right. Right. appreciate that. By the way, I'm gonna ask Khalid a question, but Khalid, if you want to come on the video as well, like on the video, let me know. I'll send you the link. But Khalid's question is, and I don't know if he was highly detailed in terms of the economic support system, what he was indicating, but maybe we can get into that. How do you uplift a nation of underserved and undereducated people with no real economic support system? Can one of y'all tackle that?
I want to jump in and go back to that last question. I agree with Asafo again. Yes, we've been under attack for thousands of years. Within this society, though, all we got to do is look at the data. We don't have a whole lot of time that we're considering. You just go back over the last 200 years and just look at certain topics or certain areas and just ask yourself, are we doing better with housing? Are we doing better with food security? How about our job situation? Has our health improved? Have our educations improved? How about relationships? How about science and technology? Are we developing anything? Black people haven't developed anything scientifically and technologically at all in the last 200 years or so. So we just ask those questions, and you get an answer for yourself. There's no black manufacturing company. We haven't created a car. We haven't developed a laptop. We haven't developed a grocery store chain. So that just look at that in itself and ask that question. What have we developed, and where are we now compared to where we were 50 years ago, compared to 100 years ago? Can't hear you, brother.
My bad. The second question. I'm about to send Khalid the link, but do you want to? One of y'all want to tackle this question? How do you feel? Oh, I'm sorry. How do you uplift a nation of underserved and undereducated people with no real economic support system? You gotta come off mute though.
Go ahead, Asafo.
Go ahead, Bossy. Well, all I was going to say is that it's extremely difficult. Any of the solutions that would be necessary to even, and this may come off to people as rather curious and even ironical, but it has to be said that the solutions that we would need, the things that Brother Kwasi just spoke about, we would not be able to do unilaterally. And we just have to be real about that. We simply just do not have the money in order to subsidize or fund those types of developmental projects in our communities. So that's why I always tell people that, first and foremost, any solution that we come up with, any solution that we develop has to include some type of reparations, to be sure. In addition to reparations, some type of Marshall Plan type of thing for the Black community, some type of investment in trillions of dollars into the community, where we could be able to subsidize and fund some of the projects that Brother Kwasi and others have spoken about. Whether you're talking about developing a Black economy, developing an independent science and technological infrastructure, things like that, we wouldn't be able to do that at this point on our own without a massive investment into our communities.
All right.
I give a real short, simple answer to that question is start studying separatism. Period. Start studying separatist movements of the past. Start studying and understanding the importance of independence and what sovereignty really is. And working toward, one plan, one goal, one plan. Everything we've tried to do in this society hasn't worked. We have never had one thorough plan movement that's separatist. And I think we need to just start having those conversations regularly.
All right. So I want to go to this question, and I'm gonna skip some questions because it looked like we almost covered the one I was gonna talk about next. But in my experience of talking to people about this concept, the myth, economics, our condition, when they read Jared, and some of these people know Jared personally and interact with Jared personally as I as well, they cannot get past this Amos, Malcolm, Anderson. You can't be talking about Malcolm and you trying to know he said it was wrong. Like they hurt, right? And I'm like, yo, Anderson is a teacher, right? He's not an economist. Amos is a psychologist, not an economist. Amos was writing the book when the study came out. He just kind of pulled it and put it in there. I kind of know the point he was talking about, but how do y'all like begin to have this conversation or this realization, or what do we do when you have like, and forgive me if I'm doing this wrong, but if we have our leaders and our people today deitizing our elders or ancestors or whatever, and everything they say is gold, that sounds like it's anti standing on the shoulders and looking further. I'm not sure. How do y'all feel about this?
I appreciate your bravery.
Go ahead, Asaf, or whatever.
So we no one is, in nowhere in this book, and this, again, as we're reading it as a group, as a book club, this is my second time reading this. I read this when it first came out on my own. And so as we're going through this book, for me the second time, Jared Ball isn't suggesting anywhere in this book that we should throw Malcolm away or throw Amos away or throw Claude. Well, we should throw Claude Anderson away, but that's another story. But
I agree.
but so we honor the ancestors. We honor what Amos Wilson has contributed. We honor what Malcolm has contributed. But we understand that these are men, these are human beings, and they're fallible, and they can be swayed, even as someone as much as of a critical thinker as Malcolm X or Amos Wilson even they can be swayed by propaganda. Even they can be swept up in this idea of something that's being proliferated so vastly, so generously throughout the body politic and throughout the intellectual circles that they were running around with at the time. So it's there. Nobody is unflawed. No man is perfect. No woman is perfect, and we just have to be able to look at it through a critical lens. That's why, like I said last time, Larry, any introduction into the Black liberation movement must come with some type of training in critical thinking. Okay, so we can look at everything we look at, friend or foe, ally or enemy. We can say, okay, we can use this, do away with this. This is important. This isn't irrelevant anymore.
Right.
Okay, so that's where I would go with that.
I mean, I think that's beautiful because, and I'm gonna bring in my brother Khalid in a second. That's beautiful because I think sometimes we forget that African centered means what's best for African people today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's kind of where we have the problem at.
And even Amos said that.
Of course,
said,
like
what's good for African people, that's African centered.
Right.
Period.
But the unique thing is, and I told you about this, and I'm telling them, like if you go read the policy formation chapter in Blueprint for Black Power, they're saying the same thing, right? And I said it, and they was like, I was like, yo, if Amos was alive today, I'm pretty sure he would be in agreement with Jared Paul. I'm like, you know what I mean? But hey, I don't know. So brother Khalid, I don't know if you read this book. Even if you haven't read the book, it's still the conversations is still relevant, and you've probably heard of our Black buying power, the 1.4 trillion, 1.7, whatever. But so some of the topics you can just chime in as you want. Some of the topics are neutral stuff. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just that we're building around this topic. So don't feel that if you haven't read it yet, you won't be able to participate in it. But Quasi, do you want to say anything before we go to the next question? Then I'll let all three of y'all answer as y'all will.
You know, you just made me think of something, and I don't know if there's any profanity allowed in this space,
Do your thing,
but
brother. We clear. Go ahead.
just the idea of black spending power, right? What the fuck are you buying? Even if we had $5 trillion to spend, what the fuck we gonna buy? What we buying? What are we buying? You know, what does that mean? You know, what are you gonna buy?
Mhm.
And what is it supposed to do to change your condition that you can buy something else or buy something more? What
Right.
does it do to help us all? You know, back to Brother Sabo's point of critical thinking education. That should be just a fundamental thought. Even if we did have, you know, $10 trillion of spending power, what you gonna buy? Where you buying it at? Who are you paying it for?
Right. So, and later on in the discussion, we're gonna get into some percentages, and those percentages will really kind of make you feel some type of way when you look at how much the land is owned already. That's not for sale, and then how much of the stock is already bought up, and how it probably will sound illogical for an individual to rebuttal this as if they, as an individual, or their homeboy Sean down the road, them together gonna take on white hegemony.
Yo, one real quick last thing. I don't know how y'all feel about Kanye West, but Kanye West has spurts of brilliance, right? He has these spurts of brilliance. Now, before he went off the wagon, do y'all remember he was trying to tell us? He was trying to put us on game. He said, "It don't matter how much money you got. They ain't letting you in the game. They ain't letting you in." Kanye was trying to show us, and we ignored him. That's when he went crazy because he tried to put us on game, and we ignored him.
Right.
You know, he was trying to get into the major fashion, you know, industry, and he couldn't even buy his way in. You know, they wouldn't let him to the table, so to speak, even though he had the money. No, it's a political game, so we can't
The-
purchase our freedom.
I
So
live in I
So,
live in
so my question would be to the group. I mean, I don't know if everybody can hear me. Peace to everybody too, man.
peace, peace.
Great discussion. Great discussion. Um, so my background is kind of more so of Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I'm from a finance industry. So I did a lot of the social engineering that you guys are talking about, not knowing really what I was doing. You'll think I was just doing my job. And a lot of the marketing and propaganda / social engineering discussions that we had in those institutions were centered around our people. Reason being, from a financial perspective, and this is not esoteric, this is not, political, this is not liberal, this is just strictly dollars and cents, and that's what they live by nowadays. If you look at the 1950s, that's when you see one of the biggest economic shifts in history, because that's when the black dollar was actually counted in white commerce centers. The Department of Commerce put out a movie in the 1950s called How to Sell the Negro. And when that movie came out, it was a paradigm shift for white business owners. Like it really literally built some of the biggest banks in this country, just the buying power, right? But the buying power is around social engineering, because you don't own any grocery stores. So guess what? Got to come spend your money at mine. You don't own any car dealerships, any car manufacturers. Got to come get that from me. And the entire world decided they were going to get in on it, not just the white boys. I mean, and if you really look at commerce now and what they're doing now, the Hindus are in your neighborhood, Pakistanis are in, I mean, everybody's gotten in on the buying power of the Negro. So I don't want to say that there is no buying power. I have a hard time believing that, considering how many ethnic groups are in our neighborhood who don't look like us, taking advantage of the buying power. I will say that it is something missing. I think the ploy and the thing that is missing amongst us is this is a high level discussion compared to what you're going to see the average person of African descent having in America. I mean, this discussion is way outside of what cats are talking about on a daily basis. And sometimes it just takes it just takes a step to say, you know what? Hey, look, I'm going to meet you where you are, have a conversation with you about where you are, and then try to elevate you. Because I agree with both of you brothers. The education piece is just paramount. You have to get cats to understand how far behind they really are before they can even have a discussion like this. So that's just kind of what I wanted to chime in on. You guys are definitely touching on a high level discussion out here today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's important. I think that's kind of what we was hitting on at the beginning, where as you get into this stuff, right? It's as true as you can get, as solid as you can get. You still have to be able to make it digestible to the people, to mobilize and organize them, right? And that's that's the tool, because now you have like, wait, Kwesi and Asafo talking about sovereignty. Like, how much money y'all got? Yep. Oh, well, Jay-Z got $1 million. This shit look better. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you haven't even been interviewed on TV before. And Cardi B, she's been on interview like 15 times. So she got to be saying the right thing. Before I get to my next question, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the audience question, let y'all respond, and then I'm going to ask my question, let Khalid speak first, and then y'all go after. But the first question, go ahead, Sapo.
I just wanted to point out in response to Brother Khalid about this idea of the idea of the other ethnic groups in the community. Number one, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is discussed in the book as well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculates Black earnings. Notice I didn't say buying power, but Black earnings at 800, roughly, what was it, Larry, like $840 million?
Yeah,
something
880 million.
880 million. Okay. And that's earnings, not buying power. So where they come up with this idea of buying power is from estimates, projections, guesses, basically. Educated guesses maybe, but they're still guesses, based on faulty, premises. I'm sure you would know even probably better than I would. The ethnic groups in our community, they know better than us that just circulating dollars within their own ethnic group doesn't build wealth. They have to, when the money goes outside of the community, increases and then comes back into the community. That's when that's the name of the game. So them coming into our community, they probably buy, property, it's cheaper to rent because it's in the Black community, it's in the downtrodden neighborhood. They can go and open up their little nail salon, open up their little, Chinese takeout restaurant or whatever like that. Just any plethora of things. But I just don't want us to think that just because they're there, a parasite will feed off of a dead carcass. A maggot will feed off of a dead carcass. It doesn't necessarily need to be alive or vibrant for a maggot to feed off of it. And that's essentially what we have going on in our communities.
Also, to follow behind Asafo, these convenience stores and nail salons and stuff like that, these are shopkeepers. You classify them as shopkeepers. These businesses that are in our communities. So, and again, even if you replaced those Indian, Asian, Hispanics with Black people, it still doesn't do anything to change the fundamental base of the society or the community in itself. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, right outside of Newark, New Jersey. And, we had all these corner stores and stuff like that, these mom and pop shops. It's literally one family owning and operating these businesses. They're not able to employ, 5 or 10 people. It's usually, you can go into your local liquor store, any of these little shops, just call them shops. It's usually a family owned business, if it's not a part of a chain or some kind of franchise. These little small businesses, you might have brothers owning it, you might have a parent owning it and their kids are working it. So you replace them with somebody out the community, and it really doesn't do anything to advance or empower the people within that community. And I think we fail to look at what substantive change is versus, these idealistic views of what we could have only if they weren't here leeching off of us, or only if we would do better with our spending, or if we knew more about how to start a business. Um, I, I can ramble on and on about it, but I just think we got to just be a little bit more um, uh, firm in our analysis and using the data, scrutinizing the data first and foremost, but using the information on a level that's going to be able to give us a concrete analysis of our problems on every level.
Right. Thank you. Speaking of analysis, and again, there's no wrong or right answer. We building and we're climbing from there. Khalid, you can start with this question, and then everybody else can chime in. What do you think, or how do you think poverty actually works? Like, what is poverty? How does it work? How does it look? And does throwing away money have any kind of bearing on anything to do with that? So just based off your understanding, what you learned or whatever. Go ahead. Come off mute though. You got hit on mute first. My bad, Clint. All right.
I think for me, my perspective is just kind of based on my experience. I funded a lot of Black businesses, hundreds of Black businesses in my career. And it's two different ways it works in my mind. Number one is if I give you access to financial vehicles, right? And those financial vehicles give you an opportunity to now build a basis of wealth for yourself, because skyrocket wealth is not something that I consider, very realistic. Like for you to be able to create Amazon and be 200 billion in 30 years, that's an anomaly when it comes to business. Now, for you to be able to sustain yourself about 60 to 100 a year, and then your son to be able to take it over, do the same, and add on, like it's a generational play when I look at it. Poverty, I think, works in that same subset. Like if I keep resources away from you, if I keep you undereducated about how commerce can work for you, and how you can use the same tools in this system to create, sustainable and passive income for yourself, then I've allowed you now to believe that paradigm doesn't even exist for you. So you'll never go looking for that. That way I keep you on a job, or that way I keep you clutching at straws rather than figuring out how to make your money work for you. That's number one. I mean, I was personally going through a lot before I started to really understand and study business. Went to school for it, all that good stuff, but I was having internal wrestles. I'm working for institutions that are supposed to be bettering the community and doing all this social enterprise. Bill and Melinda Gates doing all these research studies. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't really see, you're not teaching these people stock options. These people could be getting 20% extra on top of the money that they're making right now. You're not going into the neighborhood and teaching these people about tax deferred shelters. You're not giving them, access to true buying power, and which is the education of what to do with what you already have. And without the education of what to do with what you already have, people never believe that there's anything else that they can do. My mother, my father, like I could just go through my family tree and just go, wow, these people were dead and gone, never even realized that they could have traded options, for the last 20 years and been a millionaire right now. So
let me push a little bit, and then I want you to respond to the push. So I heard with holding education, right? And by withholding education, that creates behavior that cause. Are you saying that? Or are you saying I intentionally cause or enforce that?
Oh, the poverty is I'm intentionally causing and enforcing that behavior because I'm never going to let you. You will have to fight or come up with miracle schemes to get your hands on this information. And if you do get your hands on this information and you do something with it, you don't have my buying power, so I'm not even afraid of you. You're an anomaly. And we have contingencies in place for anomalies. We just don't pay attention to them. You don't have enough buying power to affect what we do. You're just like, oh, Jay-Z, you made it? Oh, that's nice. You know, look at you. You're one of the smart Negroes. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like you can affect global change through a poverty system that you're the lifeblood. You know what I'm saying? We make our money comes off your poverty. I'll give you an example. 33 billionaires in America right now, 330 million working people in America right now. So just think about that. You're the reason I'm a billionaire because my time is not working on a job. My time is your lifeblood, your energy, your labor, your taxes, paying for me to become a billionaire. My money turns in my sleep. I never have to think about it. Yours could too, but I'm not going to allow you to have this information. I'm not going to allow you to have these accesses. And that to me is number one poverty. Keeping somebody away from the tools of a social construct that should be utilized by everybody. I mean, Jeremiah Hamilton is one of the original founders of the stock exchange. And this is a brother. You know what I'm saying? That education is not being taught. Like nobody knows this. And if you go through and you look at financial literacy and financial education, it's unilateral. Anybody can use it if you know it. But if you don't know it, there's no one talking about it on a high level. So it creates a paradigm in your mind where it's like, okay, cool. Basketball, drugs, and rap. You're allowing me to have the education on that. You're allowing me to empower these systems. You're allowing me to move up this social chain if I don't get caught with one of them. Right. If I don't break a leg or hurt a bone, I can be an athlete. And as long as my rap career is, stable, doesn't matter if I'm snitching or whatever no more. As long as you like my music and I can get them views up, I got a rap career. So these are the avenues that our youth are now using to sustain themselves. I got a guy who has a construction company. He wants to quit the construction company to become a rapper. He doesn't see many avenues for success in rap.
Right.
So, he doesn't see many avenues for success in construction. Excuse me. He wants to be a rapper. Right. He sees rappers blowing up. That to me is poverty. Is the mindset that creates an illusion that wealth is something that you can never really, you're never going to be able to get your hands on a rap career that's going to sustain you and your family at the age of 34. Maybe you will. Let me not knock your dreams. Statistically, it's an anomaly. You know what I'm saying? So you want to, like the brother said earlier, you're clutching at things that you will never be able to tangibly interact with and create an opportunity that's going to feed you and your family in perpetuity. And I know it, and I laugh at it, and I enforce it. That to me is powerful.
Gotcha. What y'all feel? Any thoughts? I know there was some trinkets in there that made me want to know more. And then because when we speaking about poverty, it's hard to be like the people in poverty. Y'all are somewhat irresponsible for it, so it's hard to have that conversation without some of those insinuations are in there. So
correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to push against that a little bit because subtly what you're saying, Khalid, whether you realize it or not, is you're still pushing the narrative that if we had the education, we wouldn't be in poverty. That's essentially what you're saying. If we had the financial education, we would not be in poverty. I'm tired of that narrative because I understand capitalism, and we always end up going back to the nature of the society. There will always be poor people in this society. The education system is controlled by the same people who run industry. In the late 19th century, a lot of the greatest philanthropists toward education were those same capitalist ruling class individuals like the Mellons, the Carnegie Mellons, the Rothschilds, the Warburgers. They are creating education and institutions so that people can come work for them. All right. So in essence, they are working to prepare people to come and be their servants and their slaves. Even in the entertainment industry, again, Kanye West was just going crazy about this the other day. You still end up being a tool for someone else. Even though you do make millions and millions and millions of dollars, you're still just a tool, right? So, um, what do we do to get out of a system or a cycle where poverty is allowed to happen? Because that's ultimately what happens in this society. Poverty is allowed to happen. It's not that people aren't getting access. You know, if we gave everyone equal access, this wouldn't be a capitalist democracy anymore. It would be something else, right? So if we want to maintain a free market enterprise, a capitalist society, a democratic system, we have to have imbalances. Otherwise, we end up with, you know, a totally different social foundation. You know, whether it's socialism or communism or whatever it is, capitalism would cease to exist. So, let me tell you what my family did, and I think Larry, I just messaged you or I responded in one of your posts about this.
Hey, can you hold that one? Because I got a question that actually addressed that one, so you
Go
can
ahead.
answer it then. All right, appreciate it. So, Asaf, I want to pull you in, and I'm actually glad that Quasi answered it that way, and Khalid answered his this way, because it's like all about to merge together. Oftentimes we look at wealth and we like to say like, yo, I'm a businessman and all those other things, and we don't really include the government intervention, right? Like building wealth leads or needs government intervention, and poverty is government intervention or enforcement. So when we start talking about like, no, we don't have that money to spend or buy or circulate the dollar so that we can get out of oppression, sound like people are anti-government intervention. So I don't want that money. I don't want reparation. I don't want to. It's just gonna go like whatever. How do you feel about some of the things that was said by both brothers and this rejection of or not accepting that government intervention is the big hand, not like the best way of financial literacy and all this other stuff? Go ahead.
Well, government intervention. First of all, let me just start off by saying that we've never had a free market. That we have had consistent, regular interventions into the market by government, and for a lot of the part of America's economic history, those interventions into whatever market, whether you want to call it free or not, have been at the behest and to the benefit of the ruling class. The ruling class has what it has not because of talent, not because of work ethic, not because of any financial literacy, not because of any anything of that nature. It has what it has because they stole it, basically. It's a legacy of stolen labor. It's a legacy of theft of property, the theft of Native American lands, the decimation of Native American people, the rape and robbery of Africa, the enslavement of African people in this country, the colonization of African people, not only in Africa, but also throughout the diaspora as well. All of that, the past is prologue, and all of that has led to the wealth that the ruling class has to this very day. And we're in a situation where capitalism, we're not going to have equality in a system of capitalism by just understanding how capitalism works. We have actual policies in place that keep people from being able to benefit in any substantive way in the capitalist system. I live in Myrtle Beach, and many black folks ask, well, why can't we have some of these millionaires, black millionaires or billionaires, come and buy up one of these hotels on the beachfront and have a hotel for black people? And they have to understand it's because no one's going to sell it to them. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It's what is available for you to buy. What do you have access to? What can you get into to be able to benefit? And if someone was selling, all the other hotels on the oceanfront, all the other white-owned hotels on the oceanfront would come together and scrape their money together and buy that hotel to keep from a black person from getting it. That's how they run it. It's a racket, and that's and the economy is set up. There's a school of economic thought called stratification economics, and there's Sandy Darity, Derek Hamilton, Ben Shapiro, Thomas Shapiro, and others who talk about this idea of racism and white supremacy in the economic system not being a deviation from an otherwise good economic system. The basis of the American economy is white supremacy and domination over black people. That's the basis. Okay, it's baked in from the very beginning of this American economic system. And for us to change that, we will have to throw out the entire economic system altogether. It will all have to go out because white supremacy forms the basis for this economic system. So, we're talking about, just being educated enough to have access. It wouldn't be sufficient. We could all be educated. All of us can go out, all, 40, 45 million black people, however number of us black people are in the country, can all be 100% financially literate, and we will still be oppressed. We know that we need to buy stocks. But the issue is they're not going to sell us the stocks. We all know that we need to buy land, but the issue is they're not going to sell us the land. Okay, no matter how much money we have. So that's where I would go with that.
So, Lynn, I appreciate that response because the response leads me to a next question. Because there's people when you talk about this information, right? And there's some African-centered people who say, "Yo, man, it sounds like Jared is telling us to give up. Yo, we should just give up, man. That we can do. We just can't win, right?" The brothers who read the book, you hear Jared saying, "Just give up. We ain't gonna win." And Khalid, do you hear what Asafo and my brother was saying? Quasi, does it sound like, oh, there's no way we can win this? Like, are you hearing that? And then brothers, you hear Jared saying that.
So for having not read the book, I can't answer the first part of the question. You know what I'm saying? I won't even attempt to, because I can't give you the author's tone without reading the literature and, understanding what his perspective. For me, I think, again, this is the first time we've ever talked. You guys don't really know my background. I mean, I went in 2006, I was in front of the UN trying to get them to put together a Hague session to sue the United States for the treatment of our people. So, I mean, this is not, trust me, I'm not coming from the perspective of, whoop-de-woo, all we have to do is hold hands and sing Kumbaya and be educated, and then, oppression is just going to magically disappear. I definitely understand that perspective. My perspective is, if I am confined in a system, or if I'm sitting in a jail cell, I can do sit-ups. I can do push-ups. I can educate myself. I can read. I can drink more water. You know what I'm saying? I can actually have better interactions with the man in the mirror now that I have the time to do it. So if I'm sitting in an oppressive vehicle and I know I'm in that system, now I just need to figure out how to manipulate it. They never destroyed the matrix. They just manipulated the matrix. And for me, it's like, okay, if we're already in an oppressed situation, the extra 40 would do me real good. If I taught you how to get an extra 50, would that, help you in your oppressive situation? Of course it would. Because the oppression that you feel is based on your economic status. The fact that you can't move the needle forward economically is the foundation of your oppression. Your oppression. You don't have land. You're not a landowner. That is the foundation of people's oppression. Shit, black people are losing 30,000 acres a year in America right now. So when I look at that, and it's through tax liens, you know what I'm saying? I've been in on some of those transactions, and it's through medical tax liens. It is some of the slimiest shit that you, excuse my language, some of the slimiest stuff that you ever seen exist. And when you're looking at that, it's like, if it's going to happen, then I at least want the tools to be able to fight back or to keep it from happening and be preemptive and pragmatic about the situation that I'm in right now. And that's kind of the tone that that's kind of the only tone I could think through. You know what I'm saying? I know this system needs to fall. Don't get it twisted. Government listening or not, this shit needs to fall. I know how you got it. I know what you're doing with it, and I know how you manipulate it.
Let me give you a nudge before the brothers go. Let me give you a nudge before the brothers go.
Sure.
And again, I don't want to push you into a way where it's like immoral, but I'm trying to use this analogy to hammer home the point, right? Child sex trafficking is the economic engine for America, and that's what's forcing everybody to either participate or destroy it.
Facts.
If that was the case, would you still be like, well, we can find a way still to get $1? Like, you ain't gotta sell your daughter, but like that little girl down the block, like you might can sell her and you can get $20. And I know I'm trying to create an illustration of something, but if something is parasitic, violent, at what point do you want to spend time trying to finagle it? Is there another route other than like trying to get something out of it?
No. I definitely see your point. Here's how I would answer with this. If I'm in a society and the society is built on child sex trafficking, kind of like what you said, right? The facilitators are built on this. The police system is built on this. The criminal justice system is built on this. Your educational and higher educational systems are built on this. By the fact that you have lights on, a cell phone, and a car, you have participated in that system. So there's no way around not participating in that system. The fact that you have to live because I've designed your mousetrap before you were even born. Before you conceived, I set it up for you to live in these confines. So therefore, there is no way to interact with the system without being a participant because you've already transacted it. So if you're already in that system, you need to figure out how to manipulate it to give you the tools you need to get out of it.
Yeah, okay. All right. What y'all got? Asafo, Quasi?
I'm gonna be long-winded, so I'm gonna let Asafo go first.
Well, to the question, is Jared suggesting that we give up? Obviously, I'm someone who's advocating for Jared Ball's thesis, so obviously I'm going to come from it from that perspective. I don't think it's we're acquiescing or giving up anything. I'm just saying I think the point of Jared Ball's critique of buying power and dismantling of the myth of buying power and everything that we're saying even in this discussion, I hope doesn't indicate that we're saying give up, that it's hopeless, that it's futile. I'm just saying what I'm saying, I'll speak for myself, is what I'm saying is that we need to revise the strategy. At the beginning of the conversation, I said, and Brother Kali, you were probably listening, and maybe you heard this as well. If your solution is based on a false premise, the solution isn't going to work. It's going to fail. So the idea is to remove all the false premises and the false ideologies and the false ideas and the propaganda that we've been inculcated with all of our lives, and get down to the bare bones reality. And then based on that bare bones reality, we build a solution. You understand? So that's basically what all I have to say.
Appreciate that, Asafo. To answer the question, is Dr. Jared Ball telling us to give up and quit? No, he's not. If you look at, he has a bunch of information on his website and on YouTube. He starts off a couple of his lectures saying, I don't have solutions. I'm actually use his voice. I don't have solutions. I don't have solutions to the problem. He's just challenging us to think. Literally, that's all this piece is. It's 119 pages or something like that. How many pages is it? He's just trying to get us to think. Don't take this stuff on face value, right? It is not what it is perceived to be. Now, let's figure out what we do from here. And I was going to go into this earlier, Brother Larry, what my family did, right? We started this about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. I was working for Nordstrom, high-end retailer, uh, floor manager, $50,000 a year. And my wife also worked as an accountant. We doing good, living in a white neighborhood, eating what we want to eat. I was at work one day, I had an epiphany. I said, man, you know what? I'm doing good. Straight out of prison. Don't have a care in the world, no complaints. White man ain't never tried to hold me down, right? But when I look at my people are still suffering. 10 plus cousins in prison, 10 plus cousins in the cemetery, kids growing up without their fathers. I had a cousin OD, and this is really what changed my life. He's 50 years old and overdosed on heroin back in 2014. When this happened, I said, you know what? I've been blessed, I've been fortunate, but this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to stop what I'm doing, figure out how I can end this cycle. So long story short, I quit that job, started a youth program. My wife and I cut off the cable, stop eating out, stop eating fast food, stop eating at restaurants, stop going out. We don't go to the movies. We got rid of one of the cars, got a cheaper car. We don't go out anywhere. We don't do anything, unless it's, celebrating somebody's birthday or something. We took our son out of school 2 years ago, took him out of public school. We quit doing donations and tithing and stuff like that for religious organizations. We still support other nonprofit organizations where we can see how they're benefiting the community. We don't buy any name brand clothes. We haven't bought any name brand clothes in exactly 5 years. We invest in building projects in Africa. We recently sold our home, actually in Myrtle Beach right now. Shout out to Asafo. We're on the beach right now. We waiting on a house to be available. We sold our home. We got more money now than we ever had. We don't know what to do with it. But that wasn't the purpose. We said we got to downsize and we got to prepare to repatriate. So our solution is to cut ties as much as possible with this system and to help build a new nation on the continent of Africa. Not saying that, the white man's not there, the Indian's not there, the Chinese not there oppressing people. But what we're working toward, we have a better chance of working collectively with a group of like-minded people where we will have the freedom and independence to be away from any type of system of oppression. And I think that's the solution. That's my solution. And, we have so many, different ways we can go about pulling away from the system. And I think that is what our goal should be. Our end game should be, is to not do better here, but how can I cut ties in as many areas as possible?
Right. Appreciate that. So this was one of the questions that I prepared. Go ahead, Asafo. Oh, come on from mute. Go ahead.
I just wanted to commend Brother Kwasi for sharing that with us. I actually read it in the Facebook post. I'm glad you repeated it here, because it really, I think what he's offering is really a prescription of how we're going to have to live after the failure of capitalism, after capitalism has finally breathed its last breath. Now that doesn't mean it's going to die within it may outlive all of us that's on this live right now. Okay. But it is dying. And we're going to have to turn away from this, from the extravagances, and I put that in air quotes. We're going to have to simplify the way we live, especially if we want to kind of mitigate the damage that would come with an ecological catastrophe, or we're talking about climate change. We're talking about the pervasiveness of nuclear weapons, the proliferation of nuclear weapons. We're talking about a lot of different things that can literally lead to the extinction of the human species on this planet. And, you know, we're going to have to turn away from a lot of things that we've grown accustomed to and grown very comfortable with. And that's all I have to say.
Well, real quick, one other thing back to what you were saying earlier, Safo, about not having access or the ability to even purchase things. You know, this is a little private or personal information, but we sold our house and we're trying to find an affordable place to rent because we don't plan on being here longer than another year and a half. But we've had people, realtors, offer us brand new houses, right? Rather than realtors say, hey, we'll find you a property where you can pay your rent up for a year, right? Here's cash. We said, look, we got bank statements. We have money to pay rent for a year if we want to at a time. Oh, no, we can get you in a whole new house. We get you a brand new house, 5 bedrooms, 2-car garage. Why is that? Why would they rather keep you here in debt than allow you the freedom to pay your way through? You know, we gotta ask that question. You know, why is it that way? It's because that's the fundamental nature of the society, to keep you a slave in some capacity, right? And we don't want that. So we've been having a difficult time. You know, I'm not gonna go all in our business, but it's been difficult for us just to even find a convenient, a nice rental, you know, without going back into debt. They want to pull us back into debt.
Thanks for sharing that. And we're gonna begin to start wrapping up with a few more questions and directions that we can take the conversation. And again, I would hope that, and I know part of the education system teaches us to be anti-collective individuals, anti-social. I mean, that's like you look at the ingredients or the menu, that's what you see. That's what they feed Black people, African people. And so what I wanted to ask about is, you know, let's just get into this circulating the black dollar, right? And one of my, well, actually 2 of my lectures, and also the one that me and Asafo has, we talk about like how symbols are to achieve something bigger, right? And so sometimes Black folks just focus on the symbols. Be like, we're gonna circulate the black dollar. You ask them why, and they couldn't tell you why. Like they couldn't tell you like the problem, and then what's the end goal of that. You know, so they probably like practice one thing. So think about circulating the black dollar. What would that do, right? Then we start talking about land. You know you need land to do what you got to do. So in the book, he talks about 98% of the land is owned by white people. The top 5% own more land than all of Black people combined, and they own it, but it's not for sale. So like you can't. It's not like you can just buy. You know, just buy, right? So when you think about that, again, do you hear hopelessness, like playing the game the way it's supposed to be, like political power, or war, or it's just not going to be an easy way? Like, what do you hear when you know that like hegemony is a real thing, and shooting water guns at armies is probably not going to really amount to much?
5 families own more land in this country than all of Black America combined. Okay, that's so. I wanted to make that distinction. 5 families own more land, all white. All the families are white, own more land. Okay.
I did a typo.
I can actually think of one based out of South Carolina, one white family that owns more land than all Black people in America. Like,
I meant to put five families. I mean the 5%, but and that's real. In I think Colombia, 2 families own the whole damn country. Like it's like.
And here in Myrtle Beach, Brother Kwasi, here in Myrtle Beach, the family, the Burroughs and Chapin's families are basically the landlords, the masters of Horry County. You know, so we're all existing on the
Wow.
Burroughs and Chapin's plantation here in Horry County.
We're going to be here for about 9 days, so I would like to share information so we can hook up at least one day while we're here. We're in North
Okay.
Myrtle Beach.
Absolutely. But Larry, to your question, we're so most of the land is bought up. I think the Jeroboam makes reference to some proposed land that Minister Farrakhan was speaking about, wanting Black people to pitch in money to help the Nation of Islam buy, but it wasn't mentioned in Minister Farrakhan's pitch to Black America that land was actually already owned, that land was actually not for sale. You know, so when we talk, like we discussed earlier, talking about the land, most of the land is already owned and not for sale. Most of the stocks are already owned and are definitely not for sale to Black people.
Right.
You know, so again, it goes back to the earlier, discussion of, us being locked out. Even if we had the money to buy the stuff, they're not going to give us access to it. Period.
Houseway.
So one of the things that he talked about.
I quote one of my favorite comedians, George Carlin. It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
One of the things Dr. Jared Ball talked about, I think that when they did the study, recently, I think it came to actually 880 billion, not the trillion, right? Now, Khalid, one of the things that is beautiful is that we know a lot of other studies and realities that contradicts that, right? So think about $1.7 trillion, right? The spend. But think about the actual number of 880 billion to spend, which we already know they lied about that. Do Black people own homes like that right now? Home ownership, is it high or low? Give me a thumbs down if it's low, or thumbs up if it's high. All right. So when you do the math, that means they're gonna be renting a lot of shit, right? 44% of that income goes towards rent. So that 880 done drop some more. When you're talking about food, when you're talking about healthcare, when you're talking about, Starbucks and all that other shit. So the money is like, you know what I mean? But if we did come up there with that little check that say $1 trillion, they was like, well, we need that land. How much that land cost? $1 gazillion. It's gonna turn to a gazillion real quick. Now we don't have that money either, right? So it's like, I think we can play around with some of the arguments and we got this or whatever, but like the confrontation that it takes to like deal with these people is not gonna be like certain things. And one more point that he drive home is thinking about business owner. All right, and you said something about wealth, and maybe we can go ahead and before we end, give everybody a chance to get that definition of wealth. But it was once told that we need to have our own business, support Black. When brother pull out those numbers, that there's 2.5 million Black owned businesses that have 0 employees. Where you gonna build wealth at like that? I'm a Black owned business. I ain't got no damn employee. I can't afford myself. So I know I can't afford employees, right? Well, so you think about those numbers, them people ain't gonna build no wealth like that. Like it's not really gonna happen. So my question is, how will we be? Maybe we're gonna change the definition now, but how do you think people define the concept of wealth? How should we probably define it going forward? Go ahead, fellas.
For me, wealth definition for me is controlling my time. That is the biggest wealth creation vehicle. Money to me is more like shoes. It's like socks. It's a commodity. It has a price, a value. It's tradable. It's it's just a tangible good. When I look at true wealth, is being able to honestly control my time, to be able to pick up, do what I want, when I want, how I want. that is relative. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's definition of wealth is going to be very different. Mine is a relative. It's relative to me. From being on a lot of different spectrums of the so-called income plateau and being at a point where, you know, it's like, okay, well, today I can pick up and do whatever the fuck I want to do for the day. You hold on right quick, yo. I'm on another podcast, man. Be quiet. Hold on, I can't. Be quiet. That's what you need to do. I'm on a podcast, yo. I'm jumping. Yo. Oh, okay, so I was like, I'm seeing this nigga Blickful. I'm like, what the fuck going on? I was thinking it was my shit. Man, mute yourself. You still talking. My ears not working. Yo, Dre, mute right quick, yo. My bad. Yo, sorry about that, man. I got some very hype brothers in the background over here, man. It's interesting. But no, honest to God, truth is the wealth dynamic that I'm looking at is, you know, number one, being able to create employment opportunities and sustainable job opportunities for people who are definitely looking to move the needle forward to help you grow your industry or your business, and to be able to give them skills so they are, you know, more marketable, more employable, you know, in whatever you're doing. And then being able to pass that down or pass that on to another generation, to be able to have an asset that if you want to walk away from, you can walk away from. So my paradigm is a little bit different because I've just seen it done. You know, used to have to do it on a daily basis. So the way I look at it is just based off experience. It's not really, you know, I can't give you another view of it. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen it go the other way. Like, trust me, my perspective is not contrary to anything being said on the line. It's just that they are ways to manipulate the system. Like, it's not bulletproof.
Go ahead, Safa. I think Crazy helping his wife. Go ahead.
Well, to your point about the 1.5, I think it was the number was 1.5 million black businesses only have one employee, or sole proprietorships. What was the number? Oh, I'm sorry, 2.5 million black-owned businesses have no employees. This leads to a point that I brought up before, Brother Larry, and I'm sharing with you for the first time now, Brother Khalid. We are again going back to solutions that don't solve and conclusions that don't conclude. You know, we know from the data that we can have a proliferation of black businesses all throughout the black community, and that's not. And again, overall, with the context of the conversation, I feel like I have to say, I don't think certainly not myself, and I don't think anyone else will suggest that people shouldn't start their own businesses if they're so inclined to do so. No one is suggesting that. Okay, what I'm saying is is individuals starting their own businesses a program that would lead to overall liberation and black self-determination for 40 million black people in this country. Okay, and so I mentioned my being mentored in the new Black Panther Party by a brother named Yusef Shabazz, who is also a business owner, has multiple businesses in the Savannah metro area, and they have one of their premier businesses is their fish restaurant. I think it's on MLK Boulevard in Savannah, downtown Savannah. They have, as the employees, Shabazz himself, his wife, and his cousin. Whether they serve 3 people or 300 people that day, the employees are going to be Shabazz, his wife, and his cousin. Across the street from Shabazz's is McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's owned by a Taiwanese fella who, I'll be conservative, maybe employs about 30, 35, mostly black employees. Okay, if we all decide, okay, well, we're all going to stop eating at the McDonald's and start eating at Shabazz's, and the McDonald's shuts down from lack of profit or whatever, that's 35 black people without a job that Shabazz cannot, and I believe does not have the desire of replacing those jobs. Okay, so it goes to a broader point of what we're talking about, of how kind of this emphasis on supporting Black businesses, and 2.5 million of them being sole proprietorships, having only one employee, which is the owner of the business, him or herself. We're talking about Black folks in these communities who will be losing jobs that these businesses are just not capable of replacing. So that goes to a broader idea of how, of course, we'll make some individual entrepreneurs rich in the community, make them wealthy and financially stable, but it's not going to help the entire community.
All right, so I'll finish up with one of the things I heard. I saw Khalid respond to what you said about the stocks, and so he go into like the top 1%, had 49.8% of all the private held stocks, 54.7% of all the financial securities, and 62.8% of all the business equity. And then the top 10% has 84 to 94% of stocks, bonds, trust funds, business equity, and something about the real estate. So there's like a little bit of stock that you can actually buy when you look at the broad stream of thing. Like individual Black people can get on there, but kind of like I said before, can you see somebody competing? Or, and I'll ask this to Khalid, are you saying that, yes, that's true, but you could navigate that to get some money to eventually help everybody else? Like, is that kind of like the overall thing? Like, no, hell, he got to go work at Burger King, he work at the school. Me, I'm a hustler. We all trying to liberate our people. It's just, I'm going to try to get some of this milk from the cow that's eating everybody. So is that kind of what we're saying? Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference between a stock and a derivative of a stock, right? So stock ownership is extremely expensive, extremely. Derivative ownership is time-based. It's a quick hit. It's an in and out. I turned my brother on the options maybe 2 months ago. He's already made 40,000. His queen has made 4. My mother made 1,500. Blew her mind off her head. Like she's still in disbelief. Like didn't even know that it was possible. So I mean, just going through and just kind of saying, hey, look, this ain't gonna necessarily be a solution for all the world's ills or all the social problems that you have, but an extra 1,500 will help you on it. And just watching people now be able to kind of have a better way to navigate and control their financial futures, just based off pieces of information that were withheld from them or never supposed to be taught to them, is kind of more so my standpoint. It's not that you're going to be able to pick up a baseball bat and sink the Titanic with it, but you will be able to chip a bit of paint off it. You know what I'm saying? And that is still beneficial to kind of moving the needle forward. And for the business ownership piece, just to add on, is something called the trickle down effect. So if you push Shabazz to the point where his grocery store, his food store, whatever service store gains the market share of an area, then now the little businesses that are now supporting him have to also gain employees and market share as well, because now they have to support the new giant in the area. So the trickle down effect can also be a way that you take the 30 people that lost their positions at, McDonald's and put them in now positions to where they can now feed the new economic generator or the new place that we decide to pool our resources together. When Boeing came here to South Carolina, the bulk of the jobs were not at Boeing. It was at the 400 suppliers that came to support Boeing, and they called that an economic trickle down. So, I mean, it's a, we can look at the sword on both ends, but I definitely just want to be able to appreciate everybody's perspective on here and definitely not argue to the contrary whatsoever. That's not my perspective. My perspective is just more so sometimes when you get a piece of information, just like everybody has learned on this line, it changes the way you look at the world. And for me, it's just financial information is always giving me the ability to be able to move and to help people in a greater subset than, me just having a great conversation with you. That's just, my paradigm. That's just my truth. So
appreciate it. Any final words, Quasi and Asafo, before we jump off?
I got the baby right here with me. I'm gonna say one more thing and then log off. I appreciate you guys, brother Larry. Appreciate you putting this platform together. All the work you do, man, is phenomenal. Brother Khalid, brother Safo, it's great building with you. I don't know if you brothers are familiar with Mondragon Corporation in Spain, and if not, I'm gonna put a link in the chat. But take a look at the history, not the company itself or the corporation itself, but just the history of Mondragon. It's a worker-owned cooperative. This is one of the best models in the world of workers coming together and creating a sustainable corporation and eventually an entire like township state of their own. And I think that in this hour, as capitalism is on the decline, whether we want to believe it or not, especially with this pandemic, a lot of us have lost jobs and homes that we are not going to get back due to artificial intelligence and the technological leap forward. So I always think, again, as I mentioned earlier, what can we do as a people? So let's come together at some point and just talk about what collectives and cooperatives are and how do we create them, you know? So I'm just leave that. Please take a look at Mondragon's history. And I got to get off here. So I'm going to say peace and power to all you brothers.
All right, take us out, Safo.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate brothers Kwasi and Khalid coming on to dialogue with us. And you're welcome to come back anytime. We open up membership if you want to be a part of our book club. We'd be happy to have you involved. Now, next time we'll be working on chapter 6. Freedom was the call, but instead they got a bank. And I think, hold on, just give me 1 second. Larry, is that, I think we got that and then the conclusion, and then we'll be done with this book, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we'll go ahead and just knock out the rest of the book at our next meeting. So that's basically chapter 6 and the conclusion. So we can make the downloadable PDF version of the book available to you, Brother Khalid, if you're willing to join us and read over this information with us. Also, just that's for you and anyone who may be watching as well. If you're interested, you can always link up with us at the Barter and Build Think Tank, formerly known as the Black Men's Book Club, but now we're the Barter and Build Think Tank. What book is being read? We're reading The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power by Jared Ball. So anyone who's interested in participating in the book club, we be happy to have you join us. Now the broader goal of the Barter and Build think tank is for us to kind of break down information, reports and books and things like that, and policies and what have you, and kind of find a way of looking at them through the lens of an African-centered perspective, and seeing if they're good for Black people from that perspective. And if they're good for Black people from that perspective, we do what we can to kind of promulgate and propagate that information to the wider group of African people. And if they're not good, we put out information letting us know, hey, stay away from that. That's not a good path to follow. We just want to this among other things, we work on different things on our own in our own little areas where we live, but we've come together to build this think tank for the purposes of just letting everyone know that we we have to have, and I've said this repeatedly and I'll say it again, our solutions, whatever we come up with, needs to be based on the right information. Okay. And if it's not based on the right information, it's not going to help us. But if it's based on the right information, we can have policies that can lead to economic, social, political, educational self-determination for Black people. And that's what we're all about. So that's all I have to say. I'll end on that.
All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all, and come through next week Sunday for the finale.